Hi, I'm Jen with ACK. Every day we get a lot of different questions about how to perform installations on various pieces that we sell over at ack.com. The purpose of this video is to show you how to install various hardware pieces on your kayaks using either rivets, Wellnuts, nuts and bolts, or self-tapping screws. This is the standard aluminum rivet that we sell over at ack.com. Rivets are good for installing items when you don't have inside access to your kayak so that you can do the preferred nut and bolt installation method. Rivets are really good for installing pieces like Padeyes, bungee buttons, side mount carry handles, flush mount rod holders, but there are various items that rivets will not work with. What you get whenever you're doing an installation, you need to take in consideration how thick the piece is that you're installing, and then also take into consideration the thickness of the plastic on your kayak. For an example, the Scotty deck mount bracket is not a very good choice to do a rivet installation with. For one, because the rivet does not extend 50% past the bottom of the piece that you're wanting to install, like the Scotty bracket. But also, if you do the installation when you don't have enough rivets showing on the inside of the boat, you run the risk of the piece not being secured properly and it can fall off, or whenever it gets pulled off due to stress, it can damage your boat. Now for a more secure installation with the rivet, you can even include a washer, and that'll actually increase the surface tension on the kayak, creating a stronger connection point. So today what we're going to do some installations on, we're going to do a Padeye, we're going to do a bungee button, a flush mount rod holder, a Scotty flush mount bracket for a deck mount rod holder, and then we're also going to do some various ram ball pieces, and we're going to do a Starport from Railblaza. To do a proper rivet installation, there aren't very many tools that you're going to need. For one, you're going to need a 13/64 inch drill bit, a power drill. You're going to need a rivet gun that you can find at Home Depot, Lowe's, or any other hardware store. And then you're also going to need a Sharpie to help mark the spots on the boat that you're going to drill. That way you don't misalign your products. Now we're going to do the basic installation of a Padeye with a rivet on a kayak. A Padeye, some people also call it a deck loop, is really good for anchor trolley installations, anchoring points on your kayak, all sorts of various types of uses. But mainly whenever it's attached to the boat, you can use a carabiner to grab a hold of it. You can put a brass clip and throw your anchor overboard. But for an anchor trolley, you can use it as a line guide on the top control line when turned vertical to keep the line nice and flush against the side of the boat. But they're very easy to install, and now we're going to go through the basic installation of a Padeye with a rivet. So the first thing you want to do is find the location on your boat where you want to put the Padeye at. For here, we're just going to put it on the very front of the kayak. And the first thing you want to do is, after positioning where you'd like, take a Sharpie and mark inside the Padeye a dot showing the very first installation hole. Then you can go ahead and remove the Padeye, grab your drill, place it on the dot, and drill your very first hole. After that, you can take a rivet, place it inside the Padeye, and then put it back in your hole. And then do the exact same thing, grab your Sharpie, level your rivet out, or your Padeye out, and mark the next hole. Now you can just swing the Padeye out of the way, put your drill on the dot, and drill your next hole. Take your last rivet, swing the Padeye back in place, insert your rivet and you're good. Then take your rivet gun, and now this is very important with the rivet gun. Whenever you insert it onto the rivet, you want the rivet gun to touch the head of the rivet at all times, so that way you get a proper installation. So go ahead and compress, return to the top of the head, compress, and then when you feel it catch and stop, that's when you're done. Don't keep going. Just pop the head off. Repeat the process for your second rivet. All the way down. Catch, stop. And as you can see on the inside, the rivet has exploded into 3 little prongs that are grabbing the inside of the kayak to allow for the secure connection to the boat. Makes a very strong installation. Alright, so now we're going to go over the basic installation of a bungee button using a rivet. A bungee button is good to use on the kayak in various types of installations. It's really good to use with homemade anchor trolleys as an anchoring position for the top line on your anchor trolley. You wrap the line around and it keeps it from sliding back and forth on you. It's also good to use as a part of a paddle keeper kit. You can actually place it on the kayak and then use it as an anchoring spot for your bungee to hold the paddle along the side of the kayak. So to install the bungee button, it's simply just find a spot on the kayak that you're going to want to do the installation. Place your bungee button on the kayak. Grab a Sharpie. And since the Sharpie can't fit in the hole of the bungee button, you're just going to get in the general vicinity of where you're going to want the bungee button placed. So mark your spot. Grab a drill with a 13/64" bit and place it on the dot and drill your hole. Grab a rivet and place it in the bungee button. Place it in the hole. Then grab your rivet gun. Put it on the rivet, sliding all the way down to begin the installation. Once it's tightened, stop, pull the rivet gun off of the rivet, and pop the head off. That's how you install a bungee button with a rivet. We're going to go over the basic installation of a side mount carry handle using rivets. The side mount carry handle is just basically a replacement handle for kayaks that have broken handles off of the side, or for installing on boats that don't come with side mount carry handles. The side mount carry handle, when installed, is going to help you properly carry the boat from its side, and whenever you do the installation, you want to make sure that you install it in the middle of the boat, so that way when you pick it up on the side, the weight is carried 50-50, so that way it's not tilting on you. For the purpose of this video, we're generally just going to install right here on the side of the kayak so you can see how it's properly installed. So the first thing that you want to do is find the location on the kayak that you want to do the installation. When you place it on there and you're good to go with that, or with the first bracket, go ahead and grab a Sharpie and mark your very first hole. Then go ahead and mark your second hole, being careful to not move your bracket. Once you've done that, remove it. Then grab a drill with a 13/64" bit and place the drill on your first dot and drill the hole. Do the same with the second hole. Now grab a couple of rivets and your side mount carry handle, placing the rivets into the holes. Now you can go ahead and tighten these using your rivet gun and sliding it all the way down onto the head of the rivet. Once you feel it catch, stop. Remove the rivet gun and repeat the process for the second rivet. Now for the second side, what you want to make sure you do is you don't want your bracket to be too tight, because then your hand can't fit inside the handle. So you want to give yourself some slack so you can properly hold the handle. And once you have the bracket where you want it to go. Grab your Sharpie again, level the bracket, and make your first mark, and then your second mark. Remove. Take your drill again and repeat the same process that you did for the first side. Grab your last two rivets. And place them in. Take your rivet gun and tighten these two rivets down as well. And that's how you properly install a side mount carry handle using rivets. Now we're going to go over the installation of a 1-inch ram ball base with diamond base. All of Ram's bases are fairly flush, and you can use rivet installations pretty much for every single one of their installation bases. So Ram 1-inch ball is good for attaching any various Ram components that use a 1-inch connection. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to take the base and sit it on a flat surface on the kayak. And then take a Sharpie and mark your two holes. Remove the base. And where your two dots are at, take a drill with a 13/64" bit and drill right on the two dots. Put your ram base where you want it to be and insert your rivets into the holes. Take your rivet gun, slide it all the way down to the top of the rivet, and begin to tighten the rivets down. Once it catches, stop, remove the gun, pop it off, and then repeat the process for the second one. And that concludes the installation of a 1-inch ram ball with diamond base. Now we're going to do the installation of a Scotty bait cast rod holder with a flush mount bracket with rivets. The Scotty flush mount rod holder is nice because it handles both bait casting reels and spinning reels, and the flush mount bracket allows for a very clean installation on the kayak. Doesn't allow for a lot of top noise to be able to be grabbed on. So the first thing you want to do with the Scotty bracket is remove it from the rod holder, and then you want to find a flat location on the kayak to do the installation. Now for the installation on the flush mount bracket, you're going to need a 1.5-inch hole saw, a 13/64" bit, a Sharpie, a rivet gun, and a power drill. So the first thing you want to do, find a flat mount like I said just a second ago, and place the bracket on the boat and find a location exactly where you want it to be, and then hold it very still on the boat. You then want to take your Sharpie and you want to trace around the bottom post to mark the area where you're going to cut your hole. Once you've traced your circle, you're going to go ahead and take your drill with the 1.5-inch hole saw and you're going to place the drill bit right in the middle of the circle you just traced and drill the hole out. What you've done now is allow a spot for the flush mount bracket to drop down into, like so. So the next thing you want to do is remove your hole saw and replace it with your drill bit. And then you're going to mark your holes where you're going to install the rivets. All right, once you've done that, you can remove the bracket and then go ahead and drill your 4 holes by putting the drill bit right on the dots. Once all your holes have been drilled, put the Scotty bracket back on and then drop your rivets into place. Now you can take your rivet gun and tighten up all of your rivets. Again, being sure that your rivet gun is pressed firmly against the rivet all the way. And that concludes the installation of a Scotty flush mount bracket with rivets. And now we're going to go over the basic installation of the Railblaza Starport using rivets. The Starport is used in conjunction with all of Railblaza's accessories that they currently have in their lineup. The nice thing about the Starport is you can use it either as a deck mount as such, or remove the bottom portion and use it as a surface flush mount. And for the rivet installation, you have to use it as a flush mount. You can't use it with the bottom portion. So that's what we're going to do today. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to locate a flat area on the boat to do the installation. It must be flat. So for example, we're going to put it here on the back portion of this kayak where we've got a nice flat surface here. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to remove the gasket off of the rod holder and place it where you want the installation to be. The next thing you want to do is take a Sharpie and trace the hole that you have to drill to put the Starport in. Then take a drill and you want to use a 1 1/4 inch hole saw bit to drill your hole. Once you tighten it up, go ahead and put the hole saw square in the center of the circle that you just traced and proceed to drill your hole. Once you're done that, you can go ahead and remove the hole saw and replace it with a 13/64" drill bit. Once you've cut the hole for the installation, go ahead and take your gasket and place it back on the rod holder, or the starport, I'm sorry. Place it where you would like the installation to go, and use your Sharpie to mark the kayak where you're going to drill your holes to put the rivets. Once you've got it marked, you can remove the rod holder, or the starport, I'm sorry, and drill the holes right on the dots that you just marked. Then you can return the starport right back to where it was and insert your rivets. Now, using your rivet gun, go ahead and complete the installation by tightening the rivets up, making sure that the rivet gun's head is firmly against the rivet head each time. That concludes the basic installation of the Railblaza Starport with rivets. Now we're going to go over the basic installation of a flush mount rod holder with rivets. The flush mount rod holder usually is installed behind the seat of a kayak on a flush, flat surface area, and basically is a way to house your rods while you're paddling around on the water. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to find the area on the boat that you want to do the installation. Most boats have a denoted area behind the seat, as you can kind of see right here, where a flush mount rod holder can go. So the basic pieces that you're going to need for this installation are going to be a power drill with a 2.5-inch hole saw. You're going to want a Sharpie, a 13/64" bit to drill for your rivets. You'll use 3 rivets, and then of course you'll need a rivet gun. So the first step in the process is to take the gasket off of your rod holder and place it on the kayak in the appropriate place that you want to do the installation, like so. Next thing, you'll take your Sharpie and you'll trace the center hole where you're going to cut the hole at. Once you've done that, go ahead and take your hole saw and place the hole saw right in the middle of the circle that you just drew and drill out your hole. From there you can remove the hole saw from the drill and replace it with your drill bit. Now, take your gasket, put it back on the rod holder, and drop it down into the hole. Now you can take your Sharpie again and mark your holes that you're going to drill out to place the rivets. Once you've marked your holes, you can go ahead and take your power drill and drill out right on the dots. After that part's done, go ahead, put your rod holder back in the hole and align the holes from the gasket in the rod holder with the holes that you just drilled in your boat. Now you can go ahead and drop your rivets into the holes you just drilled. Now, using your rivet gun, you can go ahead and tighten up the rivets, making sure that the rivet gun is placed firmly against the rivet each time. Pop off the tops. And that is how you do a flush mount rod holder installation with rivets. Now I'm going to show you how to remove an installed accessory item on your boat that's been used with rivets with a scratch awl, or we like to call it a rivet punch. This is a piece that you can go to a local hardware store, say a Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, and pick one up. They're fairly inexpensive, and to do, you just got to be very careful when doing this process, because you're going to use this to punch the middle of the rivet out, and you're going to hammer it in a location without trying to smash your fingers. So you'll notice on the rivet you've got a small dot in the middle, and that's where the aluminum spine goes through. So what you want to do is you want to take your tool, place it on where that spine goes through, and take your hammer, and being very careful, hammer it and try to hammer the spine back into the middle of the rivet. Once you've got the head of the tool in, what you'll want to do is push down to bend the rivet head up, and you're going to want to work it around until you hear it pop. Once you've removed the head, you can actually put the tool back into the hole that you just popped, use your hammer, and pop the rivet out. So we'll go ahead and do on the second one. Repeat the process. Sometimes it'll take a little bit for you to get the spine pushed through, especially on rivets that have been installed for a long time, so you need to sometimes be very patient with this. But now that you've got the head removed, we'll go ahead and pop the rivet completely through. Remove your Padeye. And that's how you successfully remove rivets from your boat without damaging the boat, as you can see. For installations on a kayak that you can't access the inside of the boat, not only can you use rivets, but you can also use Wellnuts. Wellnuts, unlike rivets though, are going to create a better seal on the inside of a kayak, so it will disallow any water entering the inside of the kayak. At ack.com we carry two different sizes. We carry a 1-inch Wellnut and we carry a 5/8 inch Wellnut. The 5/8 inch is used for lighter duty applications, while the 1-inch is for your more strenuous installs that are going to have a lot of pressure exerted on them, say a anchor trolley pulley. Now we're going to do the basic installation of a Padeye with Wellnuts. A Padeye is also known as a deck loop, good as an anchoring point on the side of kayaks, also as an anchor trolley line guide for the top line to keep it from riding inside the deck of the boat. You can clip brass clips to these, carabiners, and other various attachment devices to clip onto them. So the basic installation we're going to do is going to be with both a 5/8 inch Wellnut and a 1-inch Wellnut, so that way you can see the difference between the two on the inside of the boat when they're finished being installed. Whenever you do an installation for and use Wellnuts, make sure to always use the same size Wellnut on all points. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to find a location on the kayak that you want to install the Padeye at. Then, using a Sharpie, you want to mark your spots in the boat where you're going to want to drill the holes. On certain accessory items, you will have to use a smaller drill bit to drill pilot holes, as you will not be able to pass a Sharpie through the hole. Those items being like a Harken pulley or the Scotty deck mount. So now that we've got our holes marked, you want to take a 3/8 inch drill bit and you want to match the diameter to your bit to your well nut. It needs to be the same size. It's okay if it's just slightly smaller, but you really want them to match. So go ahead and insert your drill bit into your drill. Place the drill on the first dot that you marked with the Sharpie and drill your hole. And do the same for the second hole. Then go ahead and take your well nuts, insert them into the boat. Then take your Padeye and your 2 bolts, pass the bolt into the Padeye, and then insert them into the well nuts. Then take your Phillips head screwdriver and tighten the bolt into the well nut. When tightening into a well nut, you want to make sure to not over tighten, because if you do, you run the risk of actually pulling the well nut up through the hole that you just drilled. So what you want to do is you actually want to tighten it to where it's just hand tight and you can feel a good amount of resistance. About right there. Go on the 1-inch well nut now. You can notice on the inside of the boat that the rubber is starting to expand and shrink up towards the hole that you just drilled. That's what's creating your watertight seal and is grabbing the inside of the boat, holding your Padeye in place. That is the basic installation of a Padeye with both a 5/8 inch well nut and a 1-inch well nut. Now we're going to do the installation of the standard Harken pulley with well nuts. The Harken pulley is really good to use if building your own anchor trolley. It's got a little flywheel there that helps keep your line flowing through it freely. And you basically want to pick a spot on the boat that's fairly flat to do a pulley installation, and you really want it to be above water line. So we're going to pick a spot on the boat that's nice and flat. I'm going to put it right about here. Now it's also nice to note that on this installation, I can't put a Sharpie through the holes because it's too thick. So in an instance whenever your accessory piece is too thick to mark with a Sharpie, I like to use this really small diameter drill bit to drill a pilot hole and then come back later with my larger bit and drill a larger hole. So we'll go ahead and take the small bit, put in the drill. Then you want to take the pulley and put it on the side of the boat. You want to hold it very tightly and drill your very first hole. Then to create an anchor, take your larger 3/8 inch drill bit, go back to the same hole that you just drilled, put the bit on that hole, and enlarging it. Then go ahead and take your 5/8 inch well nut, drop it in, take your pulley, and you want the wheel to face the inside of the boat. Insert your bolt, just like so. And now that's going to create an anchoring spot right there, so that way I can drill the second hole without having to worry about the pulley moving around on me. So we'll go back to the smaller bit. Align your pulley to where you want it to go. And hold tight and drill your second hole. Then repeat the process with the larger bit. Drill out your hole again. Drop in your well nut. Swing the pulley over and insert your second bolt. Now all you have to do is take your Phillips head screwdriver, tighten the bolts into the well nuts themselves, being careful to not over tighten so as to pull the well nut back through the hole you just drilled. You just want to go till it's hand tight. That concludes the installation of a Harken pulley with well nuts. Now we're going to go over the installation of a Scotty deck mount bracket using well nuts. The Scotty deck mount bracket is a useful piece that you can install pretty much anywhere on your boat and attach any Scotty post mount accessory to. You can even take the deck mount bracket, instead of installing it on a flat surface, you can even turn it sideways and install post mount accessories from Scotty into the side of the bracket itself. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to find a completely flat area on the boat to do the installation and place your Scotty bracket where you want it to go. Now, on thicker pieces such as the Scotty bracket, you cannot pass a Sharpie through the hole to mark your holes where you're going to want to drill. So it's important to use a smaller drill bit than the diameter of the hole to go ahead and drill a pilot hole, and that will mark your holes where you're going to come back with a larger 3/8 inch drill bit later and drill them out to size. So we'll go ahead and take it with one hand. You want to hold the bracket very tight and where you want it to go. Then take the drill and drill your pilot holes. Once that's done, you're going to want to switch your drill bit out to a larger 3/8 inch drill bit and widen out the hole. Place the drill on the pilot hole that you just made and drill out. There's the first one. Here's your second. There's your last one. And now that you're done drilling out the holes, we're going to go ahead and take our well nuts and insert them into the holes. Once that's done, go ahead and take your Scotty bracket and then your bolts, place them through. And go ahead and line all your bolts up into the well nuts. Now with a Phillips head screwdriver, go back and tighten all of your bolts into the well nuts. You need to be careful to not over tighten the bolt, or else it's going to attempt to try to pull the well nut back through the hole that you just drilled. So you really just want to get it to where it's hand tight and you start feeling some resistance. As you can see, it's on there very securely, and that concludes the installation of a Scotty deck mount bracket with Wellnuts. Doing an installation with nuts and bolts provides the strongest connection point on a kayak when doing installations on accessory pieces. Over at ack.com, we sell 3 different sizes of bolts. You've got a 1 1/4, you've got a 1 inch, and you have a 3 inch. The nuts and bolts, it's always important whenever you're doing an installation with this type of fastener that you have inside access to the kayak. If you get too far from a hatch where you can't reach inside, you can't properly install a nut on the back of the bolt or tighten it. That's where you would use a fastener such as a rivet or a well nut. When installing nuts and bolts, you also want to make sure that whenever you drill your holes, you drill a hole in a smaller diameter than the bolt. That way the bolt threads into the plastic and creates a watertight seal. Whenever you're doing your installation, you also want to include the pieces that you'll need, like the nylon locking nut. The nylon locking nut has a nylon thread at the very top of the nut that will actually grab onto the bolt, creates another seal point, and it holds onto it without letting it back thread over time. And then you also, when space is available, you want to use a fender washer. The fender washer just spreads the weight out over the installation point and allows more force to be exerted on any accessory that you have installed on your kayak. Now we're going to do the installation of a Padeye, or more commonly known as a deck loop, on your kayak with nuts and bolts. The Padeye is really good for an anchoring position on the kayak. So you can clip off brass clips, carabiners, you can use it as an anchoring point for your seats, and you can also use it as a line guy on the side of the boat for anchor trolleys. So to do an installation of a Padeye with nuts and bolts, the first thing you want to do is find a location on the boat where you want the Padeye to go. With nuts and bolts, it's going to have to be near a inside access point of the boat, like a hatch. And then also a Padeye needs to be installed on a fairly flat surface, so that way it makes the most surface contact and installs flush. Some of the tools that you're going to need for a Padeye installation are, of course, your Padeye. You're going to need a power drill. You're going to need a bit, and the bit needs to have a smaller diameter than your nuts and bolts. For this installation, I'm using a 5/32 bit. You're also going to want a Phillips bit for your power drill. You're going to want a Sharpie to help mark your drilling holes, a 3/8 inch style wrench, Phillips head screwdriver, your bolts, nylon locking nuts, and stainless steel fender washers. An important thing to notice whenever you're installing anything with nuts and bolts, especially various pieces of hardware, is you need to take into consideration the depth of plastic on the accessory that you're going to install, and then take into consideration the length of your bolt. So you can see here the Padeye isn't very thick. We're going to use a 3/4 inch bolt here. When it passes through the Padeye, I've got plenty of bolt exposed on the bottom to pass through the plastic of the kayak and still give me some on the inside to put the nut on the back. So to begin your installation, you want to take your Padeye and place it on your boat where you're going to want to do the installation. For this quick install, we're going to show you on the side of the boat, so that way you can see the install process as well as what it's going to look like on the inside of the boat on a finished product. So take your Sharpie, place your Padeye where you're going to want to be installed, and then go ahead and mark your holes. Make sure that they're all lined up perfectly. Now, as you got your holes marked, we're going to go ahead and take the drill, put it on the first dot that you just marked, and drill the first hole. We'll go ahead and drill the second hole as well. Now we'll swap over the bit for the Phillips head bit. And then take your very first bolt, pass it into the Padeye, place it on the hole that you just drilled, and then using your power drill, start threading the bolt into the boat. You don't want to go all the way because you're going to finish the installation with the screwdriver, so that way you don't strip the bolt head with the power drill. Now we'll go ahead and start threading the second bolt into the boat. Once you've gotten that far, go ahead and open your hatch. And from the inside, we're going to put a locking nut and a washer on the back side of the bolt. Once you've got them started, go ahead and grab your wrench, push it on the back side so you grab onto the nut, and then tighten your bolt until snug. Now we'll tighten up the second one. Once it's snug, the installation is complete. You can see on the back side that everything's all nice and tight, and that is how you install a Padeye with nuts and bolts. Now we're going to do the installation of a basic anchor cleat with nuts and bolts. The anchor cleat is a good way to kind of tie off your anchor line on the side of the kayak. With a nut and bolt installation, you really want to make sure that you install this close to where you're going to be sitting so you can easily reach it with your rope and tie off and cleat off your anchor. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over the tools that you're going to need for the basic installation of an anchor cleat. So of course you're going to need the cleat itself. You're going to need a power drill with a Phillips head bit. You're going to need a larger drill bit. We're going to be using a 13/64 bit to clear out the hole to make it large enough for our bolt to pass through. Then you're going to need a bit to drill your pilot hole for the bolt, and you're going to want the hole to be small enough so that the bolt threads in the plastic and creates a seal. We're going to be using a 5/32 bit for that. Then you're going to need 2 bolts, you're going to need 2 nylon locking nuts, and you're going to need 2 washers. Now, for doing this installation, you'll notice that the anchor cleat is a fairly deep piece, so you're going to need to use a little bit longer bolt. For this installation, we're going to be using a 1 1/4 inch bolt. You can see once it goes through the cleat, it's going to have enough exposed in the bottom to pass through the plastic of the kayak and give you enough room to install a bolt or a nut and a washer on the back side. So to begin the installation, and you're also going to need 3/8 wrench and then a hand screwdriver at Phillips head so that we can finish off the install. So whenever you start the installation, the first thing you want to do is take that larger bit that we talked about and drill out a larger hole into the cleat. So you're going to want to take it in one hand, hold very firmly, and make sure that your finger is on the back side so that the drill bit comes and gets you, and drill out and make the hole a little bit larger. Repeat the process for the second hole. Now swap out your bit for the smaller bit. And now, typically on an installation, that you would put this piece on the side of the kayak and you'd mark the hole with a Sharpie so that way you can go ahead and pre-drill your holes before putting the piece on the side of the kayak. With the depth of this piece, you don't have the ability to pass a Sharpie through. So what you're going to have to do is take the piece, put it on the side of the boat, and hold it firmly with one hand. Take your drill, insert it in, and drill your very first pilot hole. Again, make sure it's within reach of a hatch or an inside access point, so that way you can reach inside and put a bolt or a nut on the back of the bolt. Once that's been done, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and install the very first bolt, starting it through. So that way it kind of holds the cleat in place for whenever we drill our second hole. And it's going to make it a much more accurate install. So once you've got it started, you can hold the cleat in place and drill your second hole. Once you're finished, you can go ahead and remove your drill bit and put in your Phillips bit. And then we'll go ahead and start the second bolt into the hole you just drilled. Now you don't want to go ahead and drill all the way and start the bolt all the way through, because you're going to want to finish it with your handheld screwdriver and your wrench to tighten up everything. So once you got that started, we'll go ahead and open our hatch. Grab your fender washers and your nylon locking nuts, wrench and screwdriver, and we will go ahead and start putting these on the back side of the bolt that you just started. Once you got them started, take your wrench, hold the nut in place, and tighten it up with the screwdriver. Once you're all tightened up, install's complete. That is how you install an anchor cleat with nuts and bolts. And now we're going to do the installation of a zigzag cleat with nuts and bolts. The zigzag cleat is a variation of the normal anchor cleat, but it's a kind of a little bit of a twist on it. Instead of tying line over in a figure eight manner like you would on a regular anchor cleat, you physically just take your line and weave it through the zigzag cleat, and it'll hold it tight in position where you need it to stay. It's easy to release. Just go in reverse of how you install it, or wrap the rope around, and then re-cleat off whenever you want the appropriate amount of anchor out. So whenever you do this installation, you want to find a good area on the side of the boat to do it. And with nuts and bolts, you're going to want to have access to the inside, so close to a hatch is going to be key. You can put it on a little bit of a curved surface, which is fine. Ideally, you want to put it on a flat surface. But some of the tools you're going to need for this installation are going to be, of course, the zigzag cleat itself. You're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, a 3/8 inch wrench. You're going to want a Sharpie to help mark your drilling positions, power drill with a bit that's smaller than your bolt is in diameter. We're going to be using a 5/32 bit, and a Phillips bit. And then of course you're going to need your nuts, bolts, and fender washers. So for this installation, since the zigzag cleat is a fairly thin accessory, you can get by with a shorter bolt. So we're going to be using a 3/4 inch bolt here. You can see is when you drop it in, there's plenty of bolt sticking through the bottom to pass through the plastic and have access to the inside to put a nut on the back. So to begin the installation process, what you'll want to do is find an area on the boat that you're going to want to install. Take your zigzag cleat and your Sharpie. Find your location. We're going to pick right here. And then using your Sharpie, mark your holes where you're going to want to drill. Once they've been marked, remove the cleat. Take your power drill and drill out those 2 holes that you just marked. Once you've done that, you can remove your drill bit and replace it with the Phillips head bit. And now we're going to take the first bolt, put it into our zigzag cleat, and then using the power drill, we're going to start drilling or start screwing in the bolt into the hole you just drilled. You don't want to tighten it all the way because you're going to do the finish installation with the manual screwdriver at the end. Once you've got the first one started, we'll continue with the second. And then on the inside of the boat, you can go ahead and open your hatch. Take your wrench and your screwdriver and get it ready. And you're going to put a nylon locking nut and a fender washer on the back side of the bolt. Do the second one. Once you've got your bolt started, or the nut in the back of the bolt started, take your wrench and your screwdriver and tighten everything up. Once you got everything tightened up, the installation is complete, and that's how you install a zigzag cleat with stainless steel nuts and bolts. And now we're going to do the installation of a Harken anchor trolley pulley with stainless steel nuts and bolts. The Harken pulley comes in a 2-pack over at ack.com, or usually it's a component of an anchor trolley. It's a very helpful piece when installing a trolley because it kind of guides your line in through it and allows it to come through the pulley freely because of the flywheel. Whenever you do this installation, the wheel needs to face towards the middle of the boat. So if you're putting on the front, the wheel's going to face to the left. If you're putting on the back of the boat, the wheel's going to face to the right. So on this installation, we're going to install it on the front of the boat, and with with a pulley like this, you want to make sure you install it above the water line of the boat, and a water line is typically where the water is going to rest on the boat when it's sitting in the water. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a location on the boat where you want it to install, and then we'll go and grab all of our necessary pieces. For this installation, you're going to need the pulley, you're going to need a power drill with a bit that's smaller in diameter than the bolt is. We're going to use a 5/32 bit. You're going to want a Phillips style bit for your power drill. You're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, a 3/8 inch style wrench, and then, of course, stainless steel bolts, your nylon locking nuts, and stainless steel fender washers. Now for this installation, you'll notice that the pulley is fairly thick. You're going to want to take into consideration the length of bolt you're going to use for the install. For this installation, we're going to use a 1-inch bolt. As you can see, as you pass the bolt through the pulley, we have enough extending below that it'll clear the amount of plastic, or the thickness of the plastic of the kayak, and allow us to put a nut on the back side. So to begin the install process, first, again, find where you're going to want to put the pulley on the boat. And since this is so thick, you can't put a Sharpie through it to mark your drilling points. You're going to actually drill your holes in 2 parts. and you're going to drill one hole at a time. So place your pulley on the side of the boat, and you're going to want to hold it very firmly with one hand. Take your power drill, put it in the very first hole, and drill your very first hole. Once that's done, what we're going to actually do is take our Phillips head screwdriver, and we're going to take the first bolt, put it into the pulley, and screw it in just partially, and this is going to act as an anchor to hold the pulley in place, so that way when we drill our second hole, it's perfectly lined up. So now swing your pulley up into position where you'd like it, put the drill in, and drill out your next hole. Once that's done, we'll go ahead and swap out our bit for the Phillips head bit. And we're going to use the drill to start installing the screws into the side of the boat. And we're not going to install it all the way. We're just going to get them threaded into the plastic, started, ready to go, and then we'll finish the installation with a wrench and manual screwdriver. Now you got it started. We'll go ahead, grab our wrench, open our hatch, and we're going to put our nylon locking nut and fender washer on the back side of the bolt. Once you've got them started, go ahead and take your wrench, hold the nut in place on the back side, and tighten down with your manual screwdriver. Once you've got it all tightened up, it's good to go. And that's how you install a Harken anchor trolley pulley with stainless steel nuts and bolts. And now we're going to do the installation of a Scotty deck mount bracket with stainless steel nuts and bolts. The Scotty deck mount bracket is a very useful piece in plugging in all of the Scotty post mount accessories. For example, the top of a Scotty rod holder. The installation usually needs to be done, or actually it needs to always be done on a flat surface, so that way when it sits completely flush against the boat. You can see here this boat's got a predetermined spot right here for various bases such as the Scotty deck mount, and that's where we're going to do our installation. For this install process, there's a couple tools you're going to need. For one, you're going to need the deck mount bracket itself, and you want to make sure that you're installing it close to an access point like a hatch. You're also going to need Phillips head screwdriver, a 3/8 inch wrench, a power drill with a Phillips head screw bit. You're also going to need a drill bit that's going to be a smaller diameter than your bolt is, so that the bolt threads in the plastic, creating a seal. Here we're using a 5/32 inch bit. And for this install, you'll notice that this is a very thick accessory piece. So to do the installation thoroughly, you're going to want a 1 1/4 inch bolt. So that way it's got enough room to pass through the deck mount bracket itself and have enough bolt exposed at the bottom to clear the thickness of the plastic wherever you're going to drill into the boat. Typically with nut and bolt installations, you want to mark your drilling location on the boat with a Sharpie, passing it through the hole. But for this process, this is too thick. You won't be able to pass a Sharpie through. So we're actually going to drill one hole at a time and install a bolt in each hole one at a time, so that way it all lines up perfectly. So to begin the installation process, find the location on the boat where you're going to want to do the install. Place your deck mount bracket on the kayak where you'd like it, and hold firmly with one hand. Take the other hand, take your drill, put it in one corner, and drill your very first hole. Once that's done, we're going to go ahead, use our manual screwdriver, take the very first bolt, and start threading it into the hole that we just drilled to anchor the Scotty deck mount bracket in location while we drill our other holes. Now, what I usually do is instead of going to the hole next to it or down from it, I go across, and that'll anchor the other side of the deck mount bracket. Grab your second bolt, begin threading it in. And now, since your bracket is secured in location, you can go ahead and drill your final 2 holes. So go ahead and hold it in place, drill your first hole. And now you can drill your second hole. Now, take your drill bit, remove it, insert your Phillips head bit, and finish putting in, or just start threading in the bolts in the holes you just drilled. If you don't want to go all the way, we're just going to start them and finish off the installation with the manual screwdriver after we started threading the bolts into the plastic. Once you've got them started, now what we'll do, we'll open up our hatch and we'll take a nylon locking nut and a fender washer, and we'll put that on the back of each bolt that we've installed into the bracket. Once you've got all the nuts started, take your 3/8 wrench, hold the nut, and then tighten your bolt completely. Once everything's tightened up, the installation's complete, and that's how you install a Scotty deck mount bracket with stainless steel nuts and bolts. Now we're going to do the installation of a 1-inch diamond base ram ball mount. These are mounts that allow various ram accessories to attach to it anywhere that you want to have the installation done on the kayak. Ram has 2 styles of ball mounts. They have a 1-inch style ball mount as well as a 1.5-inch ball. We're just going to do the installation on the diamond base 1-inch ball. And basically for this installation, what you're going to need is the ram ball itself, Phillips head screwdriver, 3/8-inch wrench, power drill with a Phillips head bit, a drill bit that's smaller in diameter than your bolt is, and we're going to be using a 5/32 inch bit here. And then of course, your bolts, 2 nylon locking nuts, and 2 stainless steel fender washers. Now for this installation, the ram ball is has a fairly thin base. So you won't have to use a really long bolt on this. We're going to use a 3/4 inch bolt, and as you can see when you pass the bolt down through the item, there's plenty of it exposed on the bottom to pass through the plastic of the kayak and give you enough to thread a nut on the backside. So what you're going to want, oh, and you're also going to need a Sharpie as well. This is going to help you mark your drilling points on the boat so that way everything lines up. So to start this installation, you're going to want to find a location on the kayak that you're going to want to install the diamond base. Typically you want a flat surface mount for it. So we're going to place it on the kayak, Take your Sharpie, mark the 2 holes that you need to drill. Then take your power drill, line up on the hole you just drew, and drill your first hole. And we'll drill our second hole. Now all you got to do is open up your hatch, take your piece, your ram ball, put the bolt in, and then we're going to use the Phillips head bit on your drill to start threading the bolt into the plastic. So now we'll just take the bolt, line it up with the first hole that we drilled, and start threading it in. We won't go all the way in because we're going to finish off the installation with the manual screwdriver. That way you don't strip the threads on the top of your bolt. Now we'll do the second one. Now, once that they've been started, take a nylon locking nut and a washer and put it on the back side of the bolt. Once you've got them started, you can go ahead and take your Phillips head screwdriver and your wrench, put on the back side, and tighten up the nut and bolt. Once everything's all tightened up and secure, you're good to go, and that's how you install a ram ball with stainless steel bolts and nuts. And now we're going to cover the installation processes for using self-tapping screws. Self-tapping screws are very ideal for light-duty applications, say as installing a Padeye on the side of your boat that's going to act as a line guide for your anchor trolley. They're very quick to install. You don't need to drill out holes or anything. Since they self-tap and they screw into the plastic as is, they create a seal all on their own. Now the downside to a self-tapping screw, since it is sharp on the backside, in areas that you're going to be carrying dry bags or other items such as that, there is the potential for the bag to come up and catch on the screw, tear, puncture, and then it will not be waterproof anymore. So be very cognizant of where you're going to do installations and what's going to be inside the boat in that area. And now we're going to do the installation of a Padeye, or commonly known as a deck loop, on a kayak using self-tapping screws. The Padeye is really good to use as anchoring positions for your seat. You can connect things to it such as brass clips or carabiners. But for the self-tapping screw, you're going to want to use it in a light-duty application, so like, say, a line guide for an anchor trolley. To do the installation of a Padeye with self-tapping screws, one, you'll need the Padeye itself. You'll need 2 self-tapping screws. You need a Phillips head screwdriver and a power drill with a Phillips head bit. So basically what you want to do is you want to find a location on the kayak that you're going to want to install the Padeye at. For this application, we're going to get it real close to the edge of this boat so you can see what it looks like on the inside. But simply all you have to do is take your Padeye on a flat surface and then take your self-tapping screw, put it into the Padeye, and then you can use a power drill to start threading the screw into the plastic, but you won't tighten it all the way down. You'll go back and tighten it with the manual screwdriver later. So we're just going to start it right here. Once it's started, you can do this exact same process with the first one. as you did with the second one. Once you got it started, take your manual screwdriver, go back and tighten the piece all the way down. Once you feel it get tight, you're done. So we'll go ahead and do it with the second one. That's it. You can see where it is on the inside, where the self-tapping screws come through. It's a very sharp point. So again, be very careful whenever you're installing these things in areas where you're going to have stuff stored inside the kayak so it doesn't puncture it. And that's how you install a Padeye with self-tapping screws. And that concludes how to install various accessories with nuts and bolts, rivets, well nuts, and self-tapping screws. If you've got any questions about any of these installations, be sure to ask us over at ack.com.